Hi, Katie from Katie's Homeschool Cottage here. This is part 2 of a 2-part video series about learning literary devices and figurative language with a Christmas twist. Now, if you haven't seen part 1 and you need a review of the literary devices and figurative language such as imagery, similes, metaphors, personification, alliteration, and hyperbole, I suggest that you go back to part 1 and listen and watch our review on the terms and definitions of those, as well as the examples that we review in what all those are. So now, if you haven't liked our channel, I suggest that you like our channel, subscribe, and once you subscribe, click on that notification so that you'll be notified the next time we have videos such as this. I'm going to be doing a series of different videos having to do with language arts, such as literature, writing, and also grammar. And I'll also be doing homeschool videos where there are topics that have to do with moms and dads and hopefully making your homeschooling easier as well as more fun. So there's going to be tons of topics of those. I have those all planned out, and you're not going to want to miss those. So make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel so you'll be notified when those come up next. The other thing is, in part 1, there is a link underneath the video for you to download and print out this packet. It gives you the terms, definitions of all of these, as well as some practice pages, and it has printouts of the 2 pieces of works that we're going to be going over today, which is Twas the Night Before Christmas and the Grinch. It also has answer keys. So what we're going to do today is we're going to identify those pieces of figurative language and literary devices that are found in these 2 works. And underneath this video, there's also a link to this packet. If you haven't downloaded it yet, you can by clicking on that link. And you can follow along and find the answers with me. We're only going to be doing part of each of these, and then when we're done, you'll have the rest of the page to go ahead and try on your own and see how many you can find. And then you can look at the answer key and see how many you found correctly. And as always, please ask questions, leave comments underneath the video. Let me know what you think. Let me know what kind of topics you're looking for. All right, so let's get started. So for Twas the Night Before Christmas, we have a lot of what we call imagery and then also some of the other literary devices. So let's take a look. 'Twas the night before Christmas when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. So we have something here that tells us how quiet the house was. It gives us something to think about in our minds and picture in our minds about how quiet the house was. And it's saying not even a mouse. Now by adding that picture right there of not even a mouse, it really tells us how quiet the house was. And we're like saying to ourselves, oh, well, gee, even maybe the mice were asleep. And maybe you can picture in your head that the mice sleeping. So we can call that imagery for this line because it just doesn't say the house was quiet. It tells us not a creature was stirring and not even a mouse. Then we have the stockings were hung by the chimney with care. Now, again, that's a lot of detail. And it gives us an image that we can look at in our minds. So it doesn't just say they hung up stockings. It says the stockings were hung by the chimney with care, right? So they're not just they're not all hanging crooked and everything, but with care. So we have this image of these stockings hanging very neatly by the chimney. And because we have that image, there's imagery. In hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds. And again, there's another image there of the children in their beds. They're all snuggled. Can you picture their blankets up to their ears or their noses or underneath their chin? And you know what it's like to snuggle in your bed. So you can picture that with the children. So we do have imagery here as well, but there's something else. We have the children were nestled all snug in their beds. So we have that s sound in nestled, and we have that s sound in snug. So we definitely have some kind of sound thing going on here. And if you can remember the literary device that uses the sound to create a mood when we have words with the same sound, that is alliteration. So we have some alliteration here because it's not this slimy, snake slithered sort of thing where it sounds slimy or slithery. This is more of a soft, snuggly kind of sound, right? Nestled, snug. So that gives us more of a warm kind of cozy feeling. While visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. Now, this gives you an idea, okay, that the kids are in bed, they're dreaming, their eyes are closed, and maybe above their heads you can imagine these sugar plums dancing, right? That's what their dreams look like. Now, sugar plums would have been some kind of fruit. It's sort of rolled into sugar. You can see the crystals of the sugar on the outside of the fruit. Now, how many of you have ever seen a piece of fruit with arms and legs and dancing? I don't think many of you have. So that would be giving the body parts and the ability something to do like a person. And we said that when you do that to a thing that doesn't have the body parts or the ability to act like a person, that's called personification. So we have an example of personification when we talk about these sugar plums dancing, right? And because we can see this image of the visions of sugar plums dancing in their heads, that again is also imagery. And Mama in her kerchief and I in my cap. Now the man, the husband, the dad is talking about himself. So he's talking about the mom in her kerchief, meaning she's got this cap on her head to help keep her head warm while she sleeps because they didn't have heat like we do. And then I in my cap. So he's got this long cap, like a stocking cap, almost like a Santa Claus cap, but it's longer. And he's all ready for bed too. And that's an image that we can see with them, with the hats on their heads, getting ready for bed. So that's imagery. And then had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap. So there's not a whole lot of imagery going on there really. When out on the lawn, there arose such a clatter. Well, now you can picture a lawn, sort of like what would be on the outside of your house, like, a lawn of grass. And such a clatter. Or you could picture snow. If in the wintertime near Christmas, you've got snow. So you've got some imagery here, and then you have this, arose such a clatter. Now clatter is a sound, and we said that with imagery, we also not only talk about what we can see, but what we can hear. And a clattering noise, even the word clatter, that doesn't sound very nice. It doesn't sound very soothing or pleasant to the ear. And that a clatter is usually a sound that you might hear when somebody drops a tray of dishes. Maybe in a restaurant you might have heard them drop a tray full of dishes and you hear a loud crash, or dropping pots and pans on your kitchen floor, or a plate accidentally on your kitchen floor. That's a clatter. So there's this loud noise outside. And with that sound, remember, we have the senses of not only seeing but hearing, so that's imagery as well. I sprang from the bed to see what was the matter. Now, if you're asleep at night and it's very quiet in your house and all of a sudden you hear a sound, do you all of a sudden jump up because you've heard this sound? You spring from bed maybe and listen to hear what you heard? Well, that's what he's doing here. The dad is doing that. So we can see him springing from the bed to see what was the matter. And that's more imagery. Away to the window, I flew like a flash. So he's running toward the window to look outside. So if you heard a big sound outside, maybe you would run to the window too. So away to the window. Now, he says, I flew like a flash. So he's actually making a comparison of himself. I flew like a flash. So he's like almost like a flash of lightning. He's running so quickly to the window. So we've got a clue here to let us know, are we talking about a simile, which compares two things? Or are we talking about a metaphor, which compares two things? And remember, a simile, when we compare two different things, and we're comparing this dad to a flash, and we're using the word like. So similes use the word like or as, right? So I flew like a flash. So the word like is our clue here that this is a simile. This tells us that we're comparing two things and we're using the word like. Tore open the shutters and threw open the sash. So he runs to the window and it says he tore open the shutters. Now back then the shutters would be on the inside of the house, on the window. So you'd have to open the shutters to be able to look out the window. And the shutters were there because, again, it was cold inside the house. We want to make sure we keep the heat inside the house and keep the cold outside. So that he had to tear open the shutters and then he threw up the sash, which means he opened the window. He pushed the window up to open the window. So we have a lot of imagery there, but we also have something else. We have tore open the shutters and threw up the sash. So we have that sh sound repeated here. And when I hear that, I hear almost like a whoosh, right? He's moving so fast to the window and he's opening up the window so fast you can hear a whooshing sound. And whenever we have that mood, that feeling, then, and we have the repeated sounds like shh, shh, right? Then, and also like nestled and snug, right? We have the repeated sounds, and it gives us kind of a feeling. We have alliteration. So I hope that helps make it easier to identify some of the literary devices and what we call figurative language, right? So we've identified imagery, we've practiced finding alliteration, personification, a simile. And then when we go over the Grinch in a minute, we're going to be doing the same thing and we're going to be finding more different kinds of figurative language or literary devices. Okay, so now we're ready to look at the Grinch, or at least part of the Grinch. And then you'll be able to finish looking through these "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" and the Grinch song for the different types of literary devices and figurative language, the imagery, the similes, the metaphor, personification, and so on your own. So let's take a look at the Grinch. And we start off with, "You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch. You really are a heel." Now, "your" is a contraction for "you are." But we have "you are a mean one." Now, we really say, okay, it does sound like it might be what we call a metaphor because it has "are," which is one of the clue words for a metaphor when we compare two things and we use is, are, was, or were. However, when we say "you are a mean one," we're really not comparing him to a different kind of object. We're just saying he's mean. So let's look at the next one. "You really are a heel." Now that's a different thing. So we're comparing him, you, this is Mr. Grinch, are a heel. And that would be something different, okay? And usually when we tell someone they're a heel, we're telling them that they're really kind of a low kind of person. They're not very nice. And it comes from the heel of your shoe or your foot because that's really like the lowest part of your body. I mean, that's how low he is. He's really low to the ground. "You're as cuddly as a cactus." Oh, let's go back up for a second. We have "you are a heel." Now, we have the "are" here. And the "are" is the clue word that we were looking for up here. And this was not a metaphor, but this one is. This is a metaphor where we say you really are a heel. We're saying that Mr. Grinch is something else. He's a heel. So we have a comparison between two things, and we're using that clue word "are" instead of "like" or "as," which would be in a simile. So this one is a metaphor. Now for the next sentence, we have "you are," because there's your contraction, "as cuddly as a cactus." So what are we comparing Mr. Grinch to this time? It's you, meaning Mr. Grinch, are as cuddly as a cactus. So we're comparing him to a cactus, and we have a clue word here. Now remember, we're either looking for like or as to make it a simile, or we're looking for are, is, was, were for it to be a metaphor. So this time we have a comparison between two things, Mr. Grinch and a cactus, and what kind of clue words do we have in here? We have as. Okay? Now we do have the word are, but because we have as and as, that makes it a simile. In this one, all we had was are, and that made it a metaphor. Your, again, this is a contraction for you are. You are as charming as an eel. Well, eels, we're supposed to stay away from that because they're supposed to be dangerous to touch. I don't know how true that is, but they say that, you know, they're like, they've got electricity or something when you touch them. And I don't know if they have sharp teeth, but we don't really want to touch an eel. And an eel is like, you know, similar to a snake in the water. So if we're comparing him, you are as charming as an eel, and we're comparing him to eel, okay, we have a comparison. Now we have to look to see, do we have like or as? And you should be saying yes. We have as here, and we have as here, so that makes it a simile. Now, if it said you are an eel, and it only had are, and it's saying that he is an eel, you are an eel, then that would make it a metaphor instead of a simile. But this one has as charming as an eel, and it makes it a simile. Now again, we have our contraction, your, so this is you are, and then it says you are a bad banana with a greasy black peel. So we're saying that he is something. And what does it say he is? I hope you're telling me that he's a bad banana, right? So we're comparing him to a bad banana. We're not saying he's like a bad banana. We're saying that he is a bad banana. You are a bad banana. And because we're saying he is something else, that makes this a metaphor. So I hope you're catching on between the difference between a simile and a metaphor. And then it says, with a greasy black peel. Ooh, so he's a bad banana with a greasy black peel. So how many of you have ever seen a banana sitting on the kitchen counter and it's turning black on the outside with the peel? And not only turning black, but it's so old that the juices are kind of coming out of the banana and you have these gnats flying to the banana. That's how bad a banana he is. He's really overripe. He's rotten. He's something that you need to throw away. So it says greasy black peel. So that really describes something that we can see. So that is definitely some imagery there. Your, again, that's our contraction for you are. You are a monster, Mr. Grinch. So again, we're comparing him to something else. We're saying he is something. You are a what? He's a monster. And do we have like or as? You should be saying, no, we don't have like or as. We have are. So when we say that he is something else, that is a metaphor. So we're going to put an M over here. Your heart's an empty hole. So this time we're not saying that he is something. We're saying his heart is. See, heart's is heart is. So we have heart is an empty hole. So his heart is being compared to empty hole. So instead of a heart there, he has a big hole. And it says heart is an empty hole. We don't have like or as, we have is. And when we have is, and we're saying that his heart is something, that's a metaphor. So we're going to put an M here for metaphor. Then it says your brain is full of spiders. So there's really there's no comparison here. It's not saying his brain is spiders. It's describing that his brain is full of spiders. And when you kind of think about that, you almost think about, well, gee, if the spiders are in his brain, maybe they're coming out of his ears and they're actually coming out of his head. So that's pretty gross. And you can actually think about that image in your head. So that's imagery right there. Then it says, you have garlic in your soul, Mr. Grinch. Ooh, does garlic smell very good? I don't think so. Maybe when it's cooking, it might smell good. But then when you come up to somebody and they've eaten like a bag of Doritos, or they've had garlic bread or garlic sticks, and then they breathe out on you, that's usually not a very good smell, right? So garlic usually doesn't smell very good. And we said that in order to describe how something is, that a writer might use not only the sense of sight, but also the sense of smell. And sense of hearing and taste and touch. This one tells you how his soul smells. So we've got this garlicky smell, and that is also imagery. So it's not something that we can see, but it's something that we can smell. I wouldn't touch you with a 39.5-foot pole. Well, 39, let's see, a foot is about this big. So if we had 39.5 of these, I mean, we're talking the huge long pole. So not only is this singer saying, I'm not going to touch you at all, and I'm going to stay far away from you, but he's saying that even if I had a 39.5-foot pole, I wouldn't even touch you with that. So he's really exaggerating how far he wants to stay away from Mr. Grinch. And when we have an exaggeration, we said that that starts with an H, and that is a hyperbole, right? We have an exaggeration of how far we want to stay away from the Grinch, and that's called a hyperbole. You're a foul one, Mr. Grinch. You have termites in your smile. Oh, well, can you picture him smiling and his teeth are... He really doesn't have teeth in the movie. But if he opens his mouth and he kind of smiles, and then all these little bugs and termites are coming out of his mouth, that is definitely imagery. Can you picture that in your mind? Can you see that picture? Because that's what the singer wants you to do. He wants you to picture these termites coming out of his mouth. So that's imagery. So I hope that this really helped you find all the different types of literary devices and figurative language and practice them. And I encourage you to keep practicing with your sheets that are included, and then check your answers when you're all done and see how many you were able to find on your own. Remember, like the channel, subscribe to the channel, click the notifications, be on the lookout for some more videos, and until then, Merry Christmas.